Hey guys, we're continuing with the whole YuGiOh thing, and here we are. We played in an OTS championship today. We earned top 4 and earned an invitation to the national championship whenever that decides to happen. I played Sky Striker, and I want to talk about the deck that I played today and where it shined, where it fell short. I'm going to do this deck profile a little unusually. Like, I'm not going to necessarily, I guess just go in order of monster spell traps. I want to talk about some of the choices I made. And so I'm going to start things off by showing I played 3 Ash, 3 Effect Veiler, 3 Ghost Ogre, and 3 Infinite Impermanence. So I played this hand trap lineup because this is what I felt hit most of the metagame. Ash Blossom obviously hits searches, and in particular, it can hit the Brave engine, which is what I was expecting a lot of. Effect Veiler and Impermanence are what stops things like particularly Predaplant Verte Anaconda. That's kind of the big one for me. I want to be able to stop that every time I see it. And then lastly, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, which hits a surprising number of things, but the main thing it hits, of course, is Fateful Adventure. If you're familiar with the Yu-Gi-Oh metagame, then that will kind of make sense to you. Otherwise, know that basically I played this hand trap lineup because I figured that this is what's going to give me the best points of interaction with the most possible decks. Ghost Ogre also has some incidental synergy with this deck in some interesting ways, and I'll get to that when I get to that. I guess Effect Veiler technically does too, but I'll talk to that when I get to it. All right, so this is what I basically call my starters and pseudo starters. I'm going to go over the starters first. These are the cards that I need to see to be able to play the game. 3 Raye, 2 Roze, 1 Rhoda, 1 Hornet Drones, and 1 Sky Striker Moblize Engage. If I see any of these 8 cards, I kind of know that I am in the game and able to play. I know that kind of seems like not a lot, but remember, 40 card decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! So Raye is the best one. That's the one I want to see most often. Usually I'm going to be using Rhoda or Reinforcements of the Army or Moblize Engage to see Raye. Those are going to help me see Raye. As long as I can see Raye, I feel like I'm in the game. Roze is not as good, but I do play too because you want to have as many starters as ideally possible to be able to play the game. Hornet Drones is also not bad since it puts a spell in grave, and if you're not familiar with Sky Strikers, you know that you need to have 3 spell cards in your graveyard to actually be able to benefit the most out of all of their effects. I mean, of course, the deck is, this is the best card in the entire deck, Sky Striker Moblize Engage. If I have 3 spells in grave, this is basically a pot of greed in terms of advantage. This is amazing. I want to be able to always resolve that effectively. So these are the cards that let me play the game. The pseudo starters help me get to the starters in some way, shape, or form. I was playing 2 Area 0 and 1 Terraforming, along with 1 Multirole and 3 Pot of Prosperity. So the way this works is that Terraforming lets me search my field spell, which is Area 0. If I have Multirole or Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, then I can use Area 0 to get Raye. Multirole will send the Area 0 to graveyard. That's a really good interaction. Helps me secure my spells as well. Ghost Ogre is a little bit more desperate, but if I see my starters, I'm in the game. Pot of Prosperity is probably the card I am most mixed on. This card is very expensive for one thing, but the other important thing is that it doesn't really guarantee me a starter, but it can guarantee me a lot of things. This is effectively Yu-Gi-Oh's Dig Through Time. I can banish cards from my extra deck to excavate the top cards of my deck and pick one of the ones that I find there, and for the rest of the turn, I'm dealing half damage, and I cannot draw cards by card effects. But Pot of Prosperity is very strong. It helps me see a lot of key cards, but it's also frustrating because of that extra deck banish. When I get to the extra deck, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So those are the pseudo starters. Now, these are what I like to call the board-breaking cards, or basically the power cards that allow me to beat my opponent. 3 Widow Anchor, 3 Forbidden Chalice, 1 Shark Cannon, 1 Afterburners, 1 Called by the Grave, 2 Fusion Destiny, and then the necessary Fusion Destiny bricks. All right, so running through these, Widow Anchor lets me take my opponent's monsters, which is very strong. I mean, it's an obvious 3 of any Sky Striker deck. It's very powerful, very useful. Forbidden Chalice is targeted negation that I can play with Phoenix Enforcer on the field, or something else in my main monster zone. And it's also something I can even use in damage step. I think Chalice is one of the best spell cards around. But I think its usefulness is falling off a little bit lately because the pile deck that I lost to is not extremely weak to this card in ways that matter. But one way or the other, Chalice is always good. And I'm always pretty happy to see it. It's good going first or second, which is the important thing to me. You may be wondering why I have chosen to omit things. Like, this is pretty much my whole main deck. You've seen the whole main deck at this point. You may be wondering why I've chosen to omit things like Raye or Lightning Storm or any number of those like really evenly matched, sometimes in the main, things like that. I believe for my main deck, I am most comfortable if the cards that I'm playing in the main deck are good going first or second. If whether I lose the die roll or win the die roll, I want to be in a good position, which is why I like Chalice, because if my opponent forces me to go first, I can set Chalice and it's just another negation to stop their turn. 1 Shark Cannon, 1 Afterburners, and 1 Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave because it is at 1, Shark Cannon because it helps me deal with DPE bricks in the graveyard, as well as DPE himself, and then Fusion Destiny. Fusion Destiny is maybe one of the most important cards in the deck because it is just extremely powerful, lets me access one of the best boss monsters that the game has ever seen. You play Dasher and Celestial because they are pretty much the most optimal bricks in most decks. You don't want to draw these cards. You want them to stay in deck to send off a Fusion Destiny. Celestial, in particular, is the best one because if you have no cards in your hand and this card is in your graveyard, you can banish it plus another Destiny hero, generally Dasher, and draw 2 cards. And any kind of card draw in Sky Strikers, it's outrageous how much advantage you can generate off that. It's incredible. So that's the main deck. I'm pretty happy with it for the most part, although, we'll talk about the matchups and what I played against and where I think the deck kind of fell short when we get there. Top 4 is not bad, but I wanted first place because I'm just very competitive like that. I want to win and walk away with the prize mat and everything. So as far as the extra deck is concerned, for the Sky Strikers, we play 3 Shizuku, 3 Kagari, 2 Hayate, 1 Zeke, and 1 Kaina. These ratios, because Kagari is the best one, it allows you to get back engage and recycle it each time that you want to use it. Shizuku lets you search at the end phase. Honestly, 3 is a lot, and I think in future versions of the deck I actually am going to cut 1, but that's mainly because I'm pivoting to a different build. But Shizuku is important for sure. She's very good. Hayate is in many ways your play starter because you want to attack your opponent if you want to go second and you want to attack your opponent with Hayate to send engage to the graveyard, to add it with Kagari and then resolve it to gain advantage. Zeke is one of the best Sky Strikers by far. But you can only really have room for 1 because, well, in Master Duel, I play 2 because I have extra deck room since I'm not running Phoenix Enforcer. And I love Zeke so much. Just being able to link off what you steal from your opponent with Widow Anchor is so good. Finally, Kaina. Kaina's the worst one, but is sometimes the most important one because it will save your life. You play it because you have access to it and it can save you from OTKs in crucial scenarios. The remaining extra deck is simply the Phoenix Enforcer package, so that's obviously going to be Verte Anaconda plus Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, alongside Crystal and Fibrax, Selene the Queen of Master Magicians, and Access Code Talker as your OTK engine. So Verte is going to become more important to this deck in the future because as I think people are going to start pivoting to the Adventurer DPE Sky Striker build, turboing out Verte is kind of what the token stuff is for right now. We'll get to that, of course, when we get to that. But Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, one of the best cards in this deck. It has just so much synergy with the deck. On your opponent's turn, you can even pop Area 0 to get back into your Striker engine if you need to. It will leave its. You can destroy itself to leave the main monster zone to turn on your Sky Striker effects. It's just so good. You gain so much advantage from being able to destroy your opponent's cards every turn. The card is insane. It's unreal. Hauka Fibrax through the access code line. This is mainly to OTK. Crystal Hauka Fibrax summons Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is summoned by Selene, which is a link 4 materials to make access code Talker, and you use that to kill your opponent when you have established decisive advantage and are sure that you can take the game. The side deck, I'm really not happy with the side deck in general. It's not that I don't know what to side, it's just that I feel like that almost everything in the main deck is important, and so it is hard to decide what to take out. My side deck is 3 Droll, 3 Evenly Matched, 3 Lancia, 3 Nibiru, and 3 Cosmic Cyclone. The reasoning behind this was that I figured that Droll and Lockbird would be fairly effective against the Adventurer engine. Unfortunately, I didn't get to find out whether or not that would be true because I never drew it against them. I cited it in, but I did not see it. I did see it against Drytron today, which was pretty impactful, but that was it. Evenly Matched, I never cited this in, but I'm always kind of afraid to go without it because if I end up playing against an Eldritch heavy strategy, I want to have it. I'm not sure whether I'm keeping it in the future, but I think it might be good against the pile deck, but we'll have to see. Lancia to stop just anything banishing related, Phantom Knights, Invoked, all kinds of stuff like that. Nibiru to stop Rogue as well as just general combo. And Cosmic Cyclone because I think it's the best removal. Why not Duster plus Cyclone? Because unlike Cyclone, Duster can't be set on your first turn if you are forced to go first, and it can't be chained to anything. Cyclone can be used as disruption rather than just board clearing. I want to be able to deny my opponent as much advantage as possible. And plus it also plays around Lord of the Heavenly Sky Prison thing that some Eldritch builds play. So, okay, let's talk about matchups. Round 1, I played against Dogmatica, Invoked, Shadal. It was a pretty clean 2-0. We established overwhelming advantage, and there wasn't really anything I think that could have been done better or differently. It was just a pretty clean win. Round 2, same deal, except against Salamangreat. The Salamangreat player overextended quite a bit and was punished with a Nibiru, and that pretty much sealed it up. Round 3 was against Adventurer Prank Kids. I have a little bit of experience with Prank Kids, not a lot, but I do know one thing. You keep them off of a Link Summon as much as possible. So Widow Anchor took the cards. He could not play. Round 4 was a little bit more dicey against Drytron. I was a little nervous going against Drytron because I really wasn't sure exactly what it would be capable of post Eva shenanigans. And I was kind of afraid of Scythe, so I chose to go first. That turned out to be the wrong call. I got OTK'd quite quickly. But in games 2 and 3, we saw enough of our sighted cards as well as enough advantage generation and disruption that we pretty just cleaned it up from there. It was in Top Cut where the deck started to let me down because in Top Cut, I immediately played against the 60-card Adventurer DPE Scythe Pile, the based deck or the pile deck or the kitchen sink, whatever you want to call it. I'm looking at hands where I have access to engage, I have hand traps. And game 1, I shut him off of both Scythe and DPE, but as soon as he got into the Eldritch cards, he denied me recycling engage with a droplet sending Scarlet Sanguine. And it was pretty just access code OTK from there. And then game 2, I just did not see enough disruption. He opened the Griffin with the token stuff, and I could not stop it. So he just established his perfect board and just shut me out. I really don't know what to do about the pile going forward. It's a very cool deck, I have to admit. Like, it's a cool concept of just kind of like 60-card good stuff, but the Scythe makes it so oppressive that it's difficult to... You can't hit everything. That's the frustrating part about the deck. They have so many potential engines and advantage generation on top of being able to just lock you out of the game entirely, and that's what happened in game 2. I just got Scythe locked and there was nothing I could do about it, and that was pretty much the game. I hate to turn this into kind of like a banless wish list, but I mean, really, I like the format. I actually do think that it's cool that there's a lot of interesting engines and possibilities, but Scythe dominating so many deck lists is just a really disappointing way to have this format go. It's like, there's all these cool things that people are coming up with, but a lot of them are just being used to turbo out Scythe and make sure that your opponent can't play the game. Obviously I still really like Yu-Gi-Oh! I really enjoy the game a lot, but if you can't beat them, you kind of have to join them. Well, I don't think I'm going to go to the Scythe angle because I don't really like that style of play, and I don't really want to commit more slots in the extra deck and in the main deck to bricks and build around the Scythe concept. I think going forward, I am going to experiment with Adventurer Sky Striker DPE because I do think access to Phoenix Enforcer makes or breaks many of the games that I play. Striker plus DPE is just infinitely more effective than just Striker because DPE as a supplementary way to cut your opponent off of cards is just so strong that using the Adventurer cards to not only fill your grave with spells, but also to enable access to DPE very consistently sounds like a good way to go in the future. I'm going to explore that line of play over the next weeks, and hopefully I can come back with another event top to show off what I can do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at Sky Striker. It's my favorite deck. It's the deck that I want to play as long as it is viable. And yeah, see you around.